All right, today's lesson is section 2.4, equations of lines. So let's review some of the slope-intercept form and point-slope form. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope and b represents the y-intercept. For point-slope form, some of you may not be quite as familiar with this, but it's y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity x minus x sub 1, where m is the slope and x sub 1, y sub 1 represents a point on the line. So I'm going to show you a little bit of both today. Sometimes it's easier to use slope-intercept form, sometimes it's easier to use point-slope, but if you remember back from Algebra 1, if you simplify point-slope form, it will simplify into slope-intercept form. All right, so for example 1, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form of a line with a slope of 6 and a y-intercept of 3. So we always go ahead and start. It says slope-intercept form. So let's write that, y equals mx plus b. And then they told us that slope, which is our m, is 6, and our y-intercept, which is b, is negative 3. So for this one, it's pretty easy. We just substitute everything into the equation. So it becomes y equals 6x minus 3. All right, example 2. They're going to progressively get a little bit more difficult. So this one says write an equation, again, in point-slope form. So y equals mx plus b, of the line whose slope is 3/5 that contains the point negative 10, 8. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute my slope in, so I get y equals 3/5 x plus b. And now we're sort of stuck because we have 3 unknown variables. So let's take a look at the information they gave us in the problem. So we already used our slope, so we won't use that, but then it says it contains this point negative 10, 8. Well, if you think about it, negative 10, 8, that's an ordered pair, and an ordered pair consists of an x and a y value. So we're going to go ahead and substitute 8 in for y. We have our 3/5. X, we'll substitute in our negative 10 plus b. And now our equation only has one unknown value, so we're able to go ahead and work through this. So we're going to get 8 equals, if I reduce that, that becomes a 1, that becomes a 2, negative 6 plus b. Oh, my negative didn't show up in the problem. Hopefully yours did. I'm wondering why this looks different. So that's supposed to be a negative. I'm going to go ahead and go back and add all that. So then I get a plus 6. So if I subtract 6 from both sides, we get b is equal to 2. So your final equation, don't do all of that work. Remember, it said write an equation in point-slope form. So we get y equals negative 3/5 x plus 2. All right, for example 3, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form for a line containing the points 4, 9, and negative 2, 0. So still slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b. The two things we need to write this equation is the slope and the y-intercept. But if we look, this time they didn't give us any of that information. All they gave us was 2 points. Well, thinking back to what we did in the previous section, if we have 2 points, we can find the slope. So we're going to do m equals, I'm going to label my points. And I'm going to do 0 minus 9 all over negative 2 minus 4. So we get negative 9 over negative 6, which reduces to positive 3 over 2. So there's my slope. So we are halfway done. So there's our first step. Our second step, because there's 3 simple steps to this. The second one, if we have our slope, substitute that in. And now we're stuck back to where we were the last problem, where all we had was the slope. But then what did we do? Well, they gave us a point, so we substituted that in. This time, we have 2 points. We have 2 ordered pairs. It does not matter which ordered pair you use. Okay, pick your favorite one. I tend to use ones that have either all positives or it has a 0. In this case, I have both of them. So I'm actually going to go ahead and work with the 0 just because it's smaller numbers. It really makes no difference either way. Just pick one of them, substitute it in. Be careful, make sure you substitute the y coordinate in for y, the x coordinate in for x. So we get 0 equals 3 over 2 times negative 2 plus b. So I get 0 equals negative 3 plus b so b is equal to 3. All right, and our third and final step is to actually write the equation. So y equals, my slope is 3 over 2, x plus 3. All right, so that's your quick review of how to write equations of regular lines. When we move on, we're going to start to look at parallel and perpendicular lines. So it says, to keep this in mind, parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal. Okay, so opposite reciprocal slopes. So for number 4, an equation in slope-intercept form, so write an equation in slope-intercept form for a line containing the point 7, 1, so as soon as I see that I think x, y, that is perpendicular to the line, and again we're missing a whole bunch of stuff, it should be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 1. All right. So we have this equation. So they gave us this equation. They gave us a point xy, so I can use that. But remember, the only thing that makes lines different is their slope, and we need it to be perpendicular. So we are going to use the line that they gave us and just pick out the slope. So I like to write it off to the side and say, okay, that slope is negative 1/2. Since they went perpendicular, put my perpendicular symbol and then m, so perpendicular slope. The opposite of a negative is a positive. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. So my new slope is positive 2. All right, that is all we need that equation for. We're going to actually forget completely about that now. We don't want to look at it because we don't want to accidentally use that same y-intercept. Because if we use the same y-intercept and the same slope, it's just one line. It's not a different line. So there's our slope. They gave us this ordered pair of 1, 7. So now this problem is it's just like the last two we did. So we're going to do y equals mx plus b, y is 7, m is 2, x is 1. So now we can solve for b. So 7 equals 2 plus b, subtract 2 from both sides, and we get that b is 5. Now don't forget to use your perpendicular slope. Actually, I should probably renumber these. Our first thing was to get our normal slope. Second, to write that. Third is to write your final answer. So y equals 2x plus 5. Okay. You could graph these on your calculator app just to see, do they look perpendicular or not? All right, our last example is going to be sort of an application problem. So it says an apartment complex charges $525 per month plus a $750 annual maintenance fee. Write an equation to represent the total year's cost for A for R months of rent. All right, so we have to pay, it wants a year's cost. So that's what A is going to be. A is a year's cost. So we need to decide, okay, which of these is my slope, meaning I'm going to have to do that each month. So since we're paying things, I'm going to have to pay something each month, and one of them is a flat rate. Well, the thing we have to pay each month, because it says right here per month, is our rent. So that's going to be $525. I would typically put X, but they said to use R. Plus, if I decide not to rent, we're still going to have to pay that $750. So before we even hit month 1, $750. That's our flat rate that we don't have to pay more than once. If you prefer it in y and x, it should be y equals 525x plus 750. All right, so that's our equation. For part B, it says, now compare this rental cost to a complex that charges $200 annual maintenance fee, but $600 per month for rent. All right, and then it says, if a person expects to stay in an apartment for 1 year, which complex offers the best rate? So I'm going to put apartment 1. I'm going to write that equation I already had. So y equals 525x plus 750. And then I'm going to do apartment 2. And we're going to write that equation just the same as before. So my annual maintenance fee is $200, so that's my flat rate, but now we're paying $600 per month. All right, so there's my second equation. So now we need to figure out, all right, if they stay in the apartment for 1 year, who's going to pay more, or which apartment is actually the better rate? So it says 1 year, but that doesn't mean I substitute 1 in for my X's, because if you remember, we talked about it for our months of rent. So a year would be 12 months. So we actually have to substitute 12 in for X. All right, so once we substitute in the first one, after 1 year, we would pay $7,050 for rent and our maintenance fee. For apartment 2, if we substitute 12 in, we would actually pay $7,400. Okay, so even though the rent was a little more expensive, and that maintenance fee, and a lot of people would see that at first, they'd be like, oh, well, I don't have to pay as high a maintenance fee. After 1 year, you've already paid $350 more. So for 1 year, if you plan on staying there for just 1 year, apartment 1 would be the better option. All right, so that's just using our slope-intercept form and applying it to something.